Okay, welcome to the lighter side of the dark side. It's your weekly freak show here on Renegade Radio. Also, all of your podcast catchers, YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening to us. It's a Dark Mark show. I'm Dark Mark, the goth comedian, and I do apologize. My co-host Nicole Six will not be here tonight, which is she'll be here next week, and it's unfortunate because we're going to be talking about sex a lot. I think she can't do the shows because she might be out having sex, so that's a possibility. But we do have I guess, a sexpert.
Yes.
Somebody who makes her living. As a matter of fact, let me get your description from your website here. There's a lot of stuff. She teaches you how to connect your sexuality and use it to transform your life. And underneath that, there's a picture of her by a tree. Looks like she's having a nice orgasm. She is a sexpert, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things. Suzanne Najarian Goodson.
Yes, welcome. Thank you.
Do you like to use all three names? Is that important?
Yeah, I use all three. It's Najarian with a J.
Najarian, I do apologize. Now I know.
No problem.
Now it'll never happen again. And what nationality is Najarian, or is that a name that you added?
No, it's Armenian. It's my maiden name, and it's Armenian. So
okay, and you kept it.
I did. My parents deliberately didn't give me a middle name, hoping I would keep it, since we have all girls in my family, and the Armenians are very particular about carrying on the family name.
Oh wow! I guess look at the Kardashians. I guess so. They're never living that. They're never giving that up.
No, that's right, and it's a distinctive name. So
yes, and Suzanne, we're going to talk about sex, but before we do, we've got to do our sponsors really quick. We got Audible. I'm sure you listen to audiobooks all the time. We've got all sorts of time on our hands, and we're starved for entertainment. We're so starved, people are actually looking forward to a 4-hour cut of Justice League, which I can't believe. But use your time a little more wisely. Get some books from Audible. If you go to audibletrial.com/DMS, you get any book you want. I just picked up a 2-for-1 sale last week. I got Martin Short's autobiography and Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. I just listened to Rob Halford's autobiography from Judas Priest. I like to listen to biographies, but you can listen to fiction books, sexuality books. There's quite a few on there, and you can you can figure out what you're doing, and you get access to a lot of Audible originals. So you only used to get one book and one Audible original. Now you have access to thousands of Audible originals, including one book for free and a 30-day trial to Audible. So go to audibletrial.com/DMS, and you can also subscribe to my podcast. We're on there too for free. And also, you're not vegan, are you, Suzanne?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm not either, but one of my favorite restaurants here in LA is Doomy's Home Cooking, the best vegan food you ever had. Next time you're in LA, I got to take you because you won't believe it. Chicken sandwiches.
I'll take you up on it because I love good vegan food, even though I'm not vegan. It's beautifully done.
Oh, their nachos were named one of the 10 best nachos in LA by the LA Weekly, the only one without meat.
Wow.
Pulled pork sandwiches, shrimp po' boys. Last time I had the chicken cordon bleu sandwich. It was delicious. 1253 Vine Street, corner of Fountain and Vine in LA. They have one in Culver City and one in Toronto, Canada. So that's probably close to where you are. I know where Toronto is. I'm nervous. I'm not even talking sex yet. Also, we're sponsored by Raze Energy Drinks, the best energy drinks. I'm going to pop this open right now. This is my last Apollo energy drink. It's delicious. 0 carbs, 0 calories, 0 crash. Go to the description of the show in YouTube or on any of the podcast catchers. You get 15% off a case. I just ordered a case of Baja Lime because I'm all out of this. So that's delicious. So, Suzanne, I envy you.
Why is that?
You get to talk sex all day. That's your job.
It's true.
How did you become a sex expert?
You know, it's funny. Even before I was in this field, I was the person everybody told their sexual secrets to. I was always the person people pulled aside and said, listen, I can't say this to anybody else, and then tell me these things and everybody's got them, right? Everybody's got secrets, things they feel like they can't tell anybody to. And it seemed like I was that person naturally. But then, you know, in recent years, I found myself in a position where I felt like, you know, I'd had kids, I had a marriage that was sort of on the rocks, and I felt like this part of my life was sadly missing. And so I started studying it. I started learning about it. I started training with the best people out there in terms of not just the physiology, but, I figured a lot of us have explored kink or, various things, but what really is going on to go a little deeper, right? Like, is there anything more out there? Is there anything more than this? And so I studied with people who knew ancient traditions. Everybody'd heard of Tantra. I wanted to know what it was really about. There were also some Chinese traditions I wanted to study. So I spent with almost a master's level amount of study to figure it out. And it ended up, I couldn't believe what we didn't know. And I was just dying to teach people about it.
Yeah. Dying to practice it too, I'd imagine.
Yes, right. And so the training was 5 hours a week of personal practice. If you can imagine being assigned to essentially,
Please, that's a Tuesday afternoon for me.
Right, 5 hours a week of self-pleasure, right? So
yes.
you change your relationship to your body, you change your relationship to your sexuality. If you're doing that, with serious, particular intent, right, to transform your experience of pleasure. What a way to spend your life, right?
Now, I'm assuming that you likely either had a corporate job before, you were just a housewife taking care of the kids, or did you have?
I worked in the infant feeding field before, so I was a breastfeeding specialist. So before I talked about sex all day, I talked about breasts all day. So really,
wait, a breastfeeding specialist?
Yeah. So when people have kids, oftentimes it can be like a bumpy time, and it doesn't always come naturally. And so I was the person who was trained to come to your home, help you figure out positioning, help you make it comfortable, successful. It sounds natural, but it actually can be really hard and confusing if you haven't seen, mom and grandma and everybody do it, which many of us haven't. So
yeah.
I was in that like confidential, personal space with people, bodies and things that we think should be natural, but maybe are awkward, right? So it seems to be sort of a place I'm naturally comfortable.
See, me, I thought you were like a real estate agent or something, but no. I was helping women to breastfeed.
Yeah.
I was touching their breasts and making sure they were in the right place and all of that.
Right, exactly.
I didn't know there was a problem with that.
Yeah, it's not something that it's a learned thing. It's natural, but it's also a learned thing. And so if you haven't had someone teach it to you, you have to learn.
Right. Well, I there's another job they didn't tell me about when I went to the college fair.
There you go.
When I was in high school, like, well, what did you want to be? I'm like, well, maybe I could help women breastfeed. How about that? But that's one of your on your website. You do have that where you teach women breastfeeding and lactating, right. And you also teach them. This is I was going to get to this later, but this kind of transitions to what you were just talking about. There's so many fascinating things about you, and I really want to get to sacred sex and all of that. But you teach women how to conceive,
right? Well, I mean, we all kind of know the basics, right? We all kind of know the basics on conception, but I love to joke that I could get anybody pregnant because a lot of times, right, there are these sort of unknown factors in trying to get pregnant, and people. More and more people are having trouble with fertility. And so what are the subtler aspects? What's really going on? What can we adjust that's not medical? Certainly there are a lot of medical fixes, but often before we get to medical, we have to look at sort of what's the big picture here. And there are subtle things that we can sort of bring in and change. And it's kind of amazing how many people get pregnant once they really connect more deeply to their body and their fertility and kind of set those intents and look at stresses and things like that. It's amazing. I mean, there's a higher rate of conception when the woman has an orgasm.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Is that true?
Yes, that's actually true. And so, is that a one-to-one? Is that exactly what's happening? Why so many women who come to me want to get pregnant? I don't know. I mean, of course, I don't literally medically guarantee that. But yeah, there are a lot of subtle factors. And so it's kind of amazing, right?
So you're not having a kid, you're probably not having an orgasm.
Then not necessarily, but that can be the case, right? It's amazing how pleasure is intended.
Right. Well, plus let's be honest, you're an attractive woman going into this house with a man and a woman, and they're both getting turned on and probably more semen will be produced.
I am not going into their house, and I'm not present while they're having sex. That is not happening.
All right, but okay.
No, what I'm working with is each person in the couple individually, or sometimes just one of the partners, to really bring better connection, better communication. And then like from that flows like more juiciness, more pleasure, right? More everything.
Right.
So often it does veer over towards sometimes the meditative, but sometimes it's just bringing better communication, brings better sex, right? Better sex brings higher fertility rates.
Okay. Well, I obviously, you would think. Although I know people that just, they don't have a lot of sex, but they keep having babies. And then I know people that have a lot of sex and don't have any babies.
Right. It's amazing, isn't it? It doesn't always correlate. That's right.
Right. And the other thing is that not just have, teach people to have an orgasm, and that will help that along, but you use sex magic to help conceive?
So sex magic is an amazing thing where you're using, right? It's like that energy of turn on. If you think about like that, that even just the excitement of like knowing you're going to have sex, the beginnings of turn on, right? We think of that is energy like from the base of the body. It's like that core life force energy. So sex magic, which gets talked about a lot now, is really essentially using your energy to direct it towards whatever you want in life. So there are specific sex magic techniques where you're going back to sort of, again, tuning into the energy of the sensation in your body and moving it through the body. So again, it's a lot of like breathing sensation all through you. So when you have that orgasm, you're not just feeling it. Some people call it like a genital sneeze, right? It's not just a small contained sensation, but you're spreading that energy of pleasure all through your body with breath, with movement, with sound. So you're taking that, you're starting to harness that with your intention, with these sort of ancient techniques to get whatever it is that you want. So yeah, you can use that creative energy for a baby. You can also use it for your creative project, right? Your performance work, your creative product, whether it's your book, your music, right? It's like, if you think about it, it's the energy that creates a baby. We can use it creatively for a lot of other things. It's actually super fun.
What are some things that you've used it creatively for?
Well, a lot of people use it to grow their businesses, for instance, right? People use it to write that book. I've had a few people who have really turned, I've worked with a couple photographers. I work with composers, right? People who say like, creatively block. Let's unblock you, right? Let's move that energy, that sexual energy, which is creative energy, towards your goal. So I do work with a lot of creatives my background before I had kids, and even before I worked with the breastfeeding, was in the arts. So my actual master's is in sculpture. So I know so I know about creative work, and I know about being in the studio, that pressure to create, to bring a product forward. It's easy to get blocked. So, how can we bring the most sort of luscious, fun energy to that? Hey, self-pleasure never hurts.
You're like the New York bohemian woman of everybody's dreams.
Well, thanks.
Sculpture. Right. You've probably done some performance art, and
yes, that's Sexuality. Actually true. Yeah. Yep, that's right. And at the end of my sculpture career, I made giant interactive pussies that you could climb inside of. Right. I mean, very, very much recalling the feminist art of the 60s, but my own spin on these just giant velvet and silk creations that you could climb inside of and just be in there.
I was going to say, what were the pussies made out of? But you said
velvet, silk. I put jingle bells inside them, so when you climbed in, they made these fun sounds. The funny thing was,
were the jingle bells in the clit, or where were the jingles?
Down, like, right? Well, we now know, right? If you've seen those new drawings of the clit, where the clit has deep roots into the labia of the woman, right? The jingle bells were deep in these wings, which I don't even think wings. At that point, right? We'd known about, but that's what the sculpture had, these big, so you could like just climb inside and hang out through the whole show, which people sometimes did. Often, the funny thing is, kids loved it. Kids had that sense of going back to the womb, I guess, and would get in and snuggle in and stay in there. They thought it was a big toy, and that was a lot of the fun.
Well, they are right in a sense.
That's right. Everybody kind of knows, right?
I'm just imagining myself. I gotta commission one. That'd be great. Just climb into a
right?
nice silk pussy and with jingle bells and
Yep, and
how
just
relaxing that would be.
it's lovely, especially like, you have all, and again, it really foreshadowed the work I do now because I really wanted to activate all the senses, right? My frustration in grad school was we're looking at an object up on the wall and all the art school intellectuals were dissecting this visually. And I thought,
Right.
what about sound? What about touch, right? I want touch to be involved in my work. So I started bringing the paintings down off the wall, letting people touch them, letting people slide their arm all the way in a sleeve of velvet, having
Mm-hmm.
prickly things and soft things. It really was amazingly foreshadowing of the work I do now because I thought, how can I bring every sense to bear and get people out of their heads, right? And if you think about the best sex, you're out of your head. You're not thinking about anything, right? That's more typically a problem with women, right? Where the grocery list is in their head and they can't get out of their head. But that's when the best sex happens, is when we're fully immersed in all of our senses. And that's exactly what I was trying to get people to do with my art. That I was like, screw it. I want to just go right to the most embodied experience we have, the one we think about the most, we crave the most. Let's go right for sex.
Well, this is what's frustrating for men is, and I'm sure this has happened to you. It's happened to me many times, and anybody I've said they've related to this. I'm doing something really good, and the woman's really getting off on it, and saying, "That's it. Keep doing that."
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they do that, I can't recreate it because it's in my head now.
Right. Well, that's actually a really interesting point, right? So one of the things I work with men a lot on is really what a woman craves the most is that presence, right? Is that moment where there is no thought. We all crave that moment where there is no thought. But the thing that women often say to me that turns them on the most isn't, we all joke about the sitcoms that talk about this technique or that technique. Really, it's about being fully present with the person in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And often when you do that, you'll see women have these immense emotional outbursts, these really big orgasms. Sometimes they cry afterwards, sometimes they laugh afterwards. What creates that? It's that presence of being. So even if it's, oh shit, I just got up into my head, I've lost it. It's just bringing it right back to the person in front, no matter who your partner is, right? Bringing yourself right back to the person in front of you and being present to that experience. She feels that. She knows that. And so oh God, what, it's like just kind of coming back to, it's not about what did I just physically do so much as paying attention to her, right?
Right. And I'm paying attention, but then I'm thinking, well, what did I just do? And then I gotta,
You lost it, right?
I gotta, yeah.
You got to remember.
Did I lick 3 times? Did I do it 4? Did I do this? Is my finger here? Is it there? It's tough.
Yeah.
And also, you're talking about breathing. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's where I would say that it's less about, was it 3, was it 4, so much as the pressure, the speed, often that's what they're talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's still hard to not lose your focus. But again, you want that feedback, right? You want to know what she's really enjoying. And it is that kind of staying relaxed, right? Staying with the moment. I think it's less about the exact technique, again, about just it's like that zone you get in when you're playing sports. It's the same sort of thing. It's like you're in the zone,
right?
You're present. And even if you lose it, I think, right, just being real, just being the most real you can with yourself too. Being like, shit, what was that I was doing? Humor never hurts.
It can.
Well, if it's at someone's expense, but
No, it's, I mean, in the bedroom, yes, I don't know. I think there's a time and a place.
Right.
Time is usually...
right. But you don't certainly want to make fun of someone, but also, gently laughing at yourself can.
Well, no, I'm not roasting the person I'm having sex with. I'm saying
that's good.
I'm not I'm not. I think sometimes if it gets intense, levity would be a little. I don't know. But then again,
playful. But sex can be playful.
It can be. But you were talking about breathing. I myself. And a lot of women have noticed this. I'd say a lot. I've had sex with so few women. trying to make the numbers sound great. But they've a few times. I have this tendency to hold my breath right before orgasm, to the point where women are like, "Start breathing, start breathing, start breathing," because they're concerned. Is this a common thing, and is there a remedy for this?
Yes, and it is common. It's common with women too. We tend to contract around orgasm in general, right? We tend to kind of push towards orgasm, right? So one of the things that helps both women and men is to not just to breathe, but to breathe really deep and typically through the mouth. So you're looking at a kind of breath, and that will really, for one thing, it can really slow you down, so it can delay orgasm, and you can sort of, a lot of guys use this to last longer, but it also, the holding the breath, really the answer is keep a little bit of your focus on the breathing. This is where practicing with self-pleasure, practicing in your masturbation, noticing what you're doing there, where there's not a pressure of anyone noticing or right, and a timing issue with your partner, practicing rewiring that breathing yourself while you're alone. So if you practice a really deep open mouth breath as slow as you can, and typically with masturbation, slowing your stroke a little bit and seeing how that feels, then that's the solution for doing it with a partner. And you'll notice, most people notice that they have actually greater pleasure. And again, pleasure in more parts of their body. It starts to spread up through the torso, down through the legs more. And the thing is, just you're practicing anyway, right? So practice by yourself. Right. I teach women the same thing. We tend to draw everything in, and what that does is keep the pleasure more localized. So we want that bigger, more pleasurable experience, that longer lasting experience. Some guys will actually clench their pelvic floor muscles a little bit. It also can help to spread the energy of the orgasm through the body, sort of lightly clenching that you can also practice that while you're by yourself. And sort of synchronizing that with their breathing. That also helps guys to last longer if that's a goal of theirs.
Right. Well, see, I have the opposite problem personally. Sometimes I last too long. Right.
So then you might want to speed up the breathing, but still keeping it.
Right. Deep. Right. Because I've had where, women have a few orgasms, and you're like, and you could just tell they're like, okay, could you finish now?
Get on with it, right?
Yeah. It's not, and I'm not bragging. That's just the way it is.
Right.
And, it's just, it's one of those things. So I have, premature ejaculation, I have no concept of. It's the other way around. And I've faked orgasms just to stop it because, I could tell that she's not having a good time after a while.
Right.
And so I'll just stop. And so you're working with breasts. And then, as I said, you had children. Apparently, you had a couple orgasms. You had a couple children, and then when did you start teaching sex? And you went through all this education.
Right, I went through all this education, and and the education actually gives you a coaching certificate, right? So it gives you all the basics you need to be qualified to do this coaching work. So that was about a 2-year program. I finished that a few years ago and started the coaching work right away. And, people are out there, they need this, they want it. So it was an easy, natural transition for me.
Do you think it's just a New York thing, or do you think it's everywhere? People have.
It's everywhere. Yeah. People everywhere. Listen, everybody's having sex. Everybody has questions about sex. Everybody has sort of things that bother them, things they want more of. Right. It's something that, they're talking now about sexuality work like yoga. Like eventually it's going to be such a known thing. And so there are people like me out there who just it's like, I want to tell the good news, right? I want to speak the gospel of you can have pleasure, you can have more connection. There's simple things you can do. We've known them for a long time. It's amazing now that what these traditions, these ancient traditions we're teaching now, science is 100% supporting now that they're studying it. So there's such good information out there, and why not, right? Because a lot of us, a lot of people say to me, there has to be more to it than this. A lot of people have a sense that like there's something deeper that they could be experiencing by themselves or with a partner. It's like, I hear it very often, is this all there is, right? How can I please my partner more? How can I enjoy what I'm doing more? How can I, have more give and take, right? The people often have mismatched desire or sort of stalemates in couples. There's a lot more sexless marriages out there than I ever knew. When I was in one, I thought I was the only one, right? I had a therapist actually burst out laughing when I told him that, So how do you, how do you find your way back?
Sounds like a pretty shitty therapist. You're not supposed to laugh at people.
You're not supposed to laugh at people. Well, it was in all kindness, but it was very reassuring for me, because I think whatever thing we're worried about, we often think we're the only one, right? And so I have somebody to talk to about it and normalize it and say, here's some things to try.
Well, speak about normalizing, that's the stereotype, is that everything's hot and heavy. Then you get married, then you have a couple kids, and that's it. It's like the Married with Children template,
Right. That's right.
And so, why is that?
Well, it's really not uncommon, and part of it is just the stress of having children, right? Part of it is scripts and conditioning we believe about ourselves and who we are when we become parents. Part of it is that when a woman has babies, her body changes. Oftentimes, she doesn't have the time to figure out what the heck is going on, and she's afraid to communicate to her partner, I'm afraid it hurts, or it does hurt, or, things are different, or, we get halfway in and the baby wakes up, or, and so it takes work. Like, we wouldn't expect to never work out and stay in shape. You wouldn't expect to never work on your sexuality and have it stay vibrant as life changes. Becoming parents is one of the biggest life changes people ever go through, and they expect that sex will just continue. It takes some effort. It takes talking about it. It takes saying, what if for a few months we don't look at penetrative sex at all? What if for a few months, like we just take turns, just offer each, like I offer you pleasure one night, you offer me the next, and we're not trying to have mutual pleasure because it's just too complicated right now. Let's try some different things. Here's some things we could talk about. Here's 3 things I really need from you to be able to have sex. What if one of them is just, please wash the dishes, so that I'm not here thinking about that, right? It's hot, right? One of the things I hear so much is that you would never believe how much women say, oh my God, when my husband vacuumed the house, forget about it. It's such a turn on, right? Because knowing you're supported. It's again, one of those stereotypes that what turns people on, what turns men stereotypically on, and what turns women stereotypically on sometimes is a fit, right? That those acts of service, those love languages that you hear about, whereas oftentimes it's that visual turn on for men. Sometimes it's more tactile for women. Sometimes it is those acts of service, of knowing, wow, he really knew how stressed I was, and he brought takeout when I didn't feel like cooking. And then I wasn't fried from cooking and washing up. I had more energy for sex. It can be as simple as those conversations that maybe never happen. Or a lot of times it's women who have put themselves in the position of having sex when they didn't really want to because they were afraid they'd lose their marriage.
Right.
So often it's not coercive sex. It's women pressuring themselves to be something and not dropping into what's real for them. So a lot of what I do is turn women on to their real turn on and then have them bring that to their partner. Mind blowing, because they didn't believe they had that anymore, right?
And we've been talking binary, and we're going to get to non-binary in a second. But what is just name one thing that you found in your practice that women are really turned on by that most men have no idea? Besides washing the dishes.
Let's see, that women are really turned on by that men have no idea. I think that one way to put it, and again, we are talking very binary here, but one way to put it is that women's pleasure moves sort of from the outside of their body towards their genitals, where men's pleasure would tend to spread from the genitals out, right? So start out and move in. And so starting with hands, with feet, with neck, right? with head massage, and then moving towards the genitals. Women don't often know how much it builds turn on. Some of the most incredible orgasms I've ever had in my life were from really, really slow moving towards the pussy instead of starting there and then hoping that the energy will spread. So I think it's a sort of a little bit of a reverse equation, and guys don't always really, really take that into consideration. And I think with women too, it's like, okay, don't expect that to work on him. Go straight for the cock, and then maybe make some of those beautiful movements out up his chest, right towards the rest of his body. So, and again, we're talking very binary here, but just generally speaking,
right? Because in my experience, this has been borne out by women I've gone out with and going to strip clubs on occasion. The slow knee to the groin, always a winner.
Right.
But it's got to be slow. It's got to be very slow, and yes, that's always a winner. But you're right. It's as far as men, it's very. But I know what you mean. I'm definitely somebody who loves to massage a woman, and there's nothing better than that. Nice and slow, and work your way there.
And it makes all the difference in terms of giving. Again, it gives her that time to get turned on. It just, most of us have heard, it just takes longer.
Although. Do you think there's a generational thing, or is it just that younger women may not have the experience? Because my experience with younger women is they really want to get to it.
Interesting.
And you sometimes I had a girlfriend. She was about 15 years younger than I was, and I actually had to stop her like after like 4 times we had sex, and she just like jumped on me, and it was. It just was over in a flash, and it was 10 minutes every time, and it was just her just being super aggressive, and I had to stop her and say, look, and she was getting turned on, but I had to stop her and say, look, let's slow down and do it the way I like to do it.
And how did she respond to that? Did she enjoy that, or was she just kind of a hard and fast personality? It
took a couple months, but then we figured out how to orgasm simultaneously.
Amazing.
And
so a lot of right. So that's a great example of amazing communication and expansion. So what happens is, there's that expression, what fires together wires together. So the more we do one thing, the more our body gets used to that one thing. So we know one path to orgasm. That's why sort of expanding your palette of what gets you there brings you more pleasure. So oftentimes, if we know one way of doing it, our body, that's a reliable way, we're going to do that way. So it may just be individual differences. I don't think it's a generational thing so much as it's an individual thing. Some people are just faster out the gate. We were talking about books earlier, and there's a really, really great book, one of the best books out there, called Come As You Are, that talks about everybody having different sort of accelerator, different kind of brakes on their sexual system, and how do you find the match for that. So some bodies just really step on the gas fast, and they get there fast, but that doesn't mean that their nervous systems can't train to slow down, move into it more quickly. Just like some systems have really sensitive brakes where it's like one little thing goes wrong and their just whole body's like, I can't, and their turn on is just gone. And then they need to have it sort of gently brought back online again if they're going to be able to continue. So it's, you may have been with women like that where it's something will just set them off and they're just done. And that can be true of guys. It can be true of anyone. And so working with different people's sort of speed and rate of turn on and how sensitive they are to being able to sustain that is part of getting to know somebody as a lover. So it sounds like your communication there was just amazing.
Yeah, in that case, but I've had other cases where, like you say, it's I've had women that I was going too slow for them. I've had women that I wasn't going slow enough, and and some women like the finger, some women like the tongue, some women like just getting fogged. Some women love anal. Some women love all sorts of things. So, and it's I think Joe Rogan said it. He had a bit. He said that every vagina is different.
That's right.
And then when you're in a long relationship, you get used to a vagina. You got to go to a new one, and you're doing the same moves as the old one. It's not going to work.
Right. And that's where it's all about communication, right? It's all about communication, and not just verbal communication, but that physical communication like you were talking about earlier, where you're doing something right and you have to stay in physical communication with your partner and noticing how they're responding, what their body's doing, what they sound like, what they feel like, all those little cues, and just starting all over. I think, frankly, every guy is different too, right? So it's not just that every vagina is different.
I don't know. I think a blowjob works on every guy.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And trust me, I'm wearing eyeliner. I'm as sensitive a man as there is, and yeah, just I have a joke. I actually got banned on Facebook this week, oddly enough.
Really?
Yeah, because because I see Cosmopolitan magazine. I see all these women like, I don't understand men. And what is there to understand?
Right.
Pizza, beer, and a blowjob were set for a month. But my whole joke was, man is a step above chimp. When it comes to sex, it's true.
And that's what got you banned on Facebook?
Yeah, because my friend had somebody send her a dick pic.
Oh yeah.
And then said something crass about, I could fuck for hours or something like that. She put it on Facebook, and it's like, if a woman said this to a man, would it work? And I said it would work like a charm, because men are a step above chimp, and they blocked it.
Interesting.
Because I'm a man who was making fun of men in a joking manner.
Well, I will tell you, Facebook is very inconsistent about what it bans, and it's a whole other conversation. But it's also, right, you have to remember that it's not just how men are wired around sex. It's also the whole Cosmo thing about what do men want, what do men want, what do men want. It's really interesting that, like, where in there is the article about teach men how to get you off, right?
That should be there.
It should be there, but most of the time, because most men I talk to get so much pleasure about getting their partner off, right? And yet women are taught, like, give a man what he wants, give a man what he wants, give a man what he wants. Even the most general definition of did sex happen is usually penetration and male orgasm, right? If not that that's the correct definition, but sometimes if you ask people, what does it mean if you had sex? It's all based around this male experience. No one's teaching women how to experience their own pleasure and how to teach men how to give them that pleasure. Even Cosmo, in those instances that you're talking about, are focused so much on make your man happy, right?
Right.
Whereas often teaching your man how to make you happy is more happiness for everybody, right?
That's the key.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're both happy, but...
Right. And P.S., that's true of same-sex couples. That's true of, all kinds of combinations of people, right? Teaching someone how to make you happy. Sure, right. Anyone who has a dick, loves a blowjob is a pretty easy way to go. But there's a lot of nuance in there, a lot of ways to take that farther. The guys I talk to say, there's those women who are blowing me because they know I want it, but the look on their face is like, I'm doing this because I
the blowjob of death. I've heard about those. I've never been in a relationship that long where that's happened.
No.
Where somebody's blown me out of obligation, but I've heard about it.
But it happens. It happens a lot, as opposed to that woman who truly loves it, is truly deriving her own pleasure from it. It loves the position it puts her in terms of giving you that much pleasure. However, whatever the power dynamic is between that couple, someone who really is enjoying that. Typically, guys tell me, oh my God, that's just so much better.
69 is overrated or not?
Again, that depends on a lot of things. It depends on the physiology of the two people involved, right? Is this a good, is it a good body length match, right?
Right.
Is somebody comfortable, got enough tone in their thighs to manage that? A lot of times it is overrated because sometimes it just makes the most sense to, like I said earlier, take turns giving pleasure and receiving so you can fully lay back and receive. And for some people, it's the absolute pinnacle, right? So is it a match? Isn't it?
I like it. I personally, I enjoy it. I always have. But my friend who, and former guest, Ella Darling, who's an adult film star, she says it's overrated. Because you're not concentrating on giving the pleasure. But to me, that's what I like. In that, if I'm doing it so intensely that she loses her concentration and actually gets off the penis, it's like, and the other way around. I love that back and forth. But
Right. So
As
again,
you can tell, I haven't had sex in a long time. So,
well, a lot of us in COVID, right? So that's the thing where it's like, I think having that conversation that you're talking about, that like, I love it when you're so overwhelmed with pleasure that you stop, so that she doesn't feel like, oh God, I can't let myself be overwhelmed with pleasure because I'll stop. Right. Again, it's what stories is she telling herself? I would say the same thing with your question at the beginning in terms of like, God, she says to keep doing that, and I lose the train of thought of what was I even doing. Tell her that, right?
okay.
Tell your partner where, tell your partner, even those little insecurities, those little questions.
Afterwards or during?
Typically, I would say afterwards or before, right? So typically you want to be out of bed, or I really recommend cuddling, right? So always, always, always do your after talk, right? Always, 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 what did you love? And even if you don't want to tell your partner what you didn't love, tell them the 3 things that you loved. That will reinforce it. You will get more of what you tell your partner you love. There's that like classic pokey thing that guys do with the tongue. Most women don't enjoy a pointier tongue. Some do. It's like saying, oh, I love it when you lick me like an ice cream cone, as opposed to like, I hate that jabby thing you do with your pointy tongue, right? It makes it so much easier to, right? And again, not all women, but it makes it so much easier to hear what you did great. And then you're going to want to do more of that.
Because some women like that intense pressure.
Some women like that intense pressure.
I had an ex girlfriend. She loved the fingers. Like it was just automatic. And if I was using the tongue, I would have to really
intensify the pressure.
To jab her as you will.
Right. And there's, again, why communication is so important. And what works on one pussy doesn't work on another. It's the other thing is, depending on who the woman is, over the course of weeks, over the course of a month, a woman is changing, right? So typically the men's cycle is a 24-hour hormonal cycle. The woman's is a 28-day. So 3rd week of the month, there's that pre-period progesterone spike. Women want a really different kind of touch, or sometimes no touch, right? So you're dealing with a different woman every day of the month, which is the ultimate frustration in a lot of ways. And that's where, again, learning who the partner is in front of you, being present to her, whether she needs to have an orgasm and a good cry, or just needs it really hard that day, or whatever it is, getting to know your partner and having that communication makes all the difference.
Now, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to talk about how sex during COVID. I mean, it's been a year, honestly, except for a very brief and very calculated moment in Christmas where I hugged my parents and hugged my sister. I have not hugged anybody, held anybody's hand, shook anybody's hand, touched anybody, nor have I had sex. My elbow, I've been doing a lot of elbows, that stuff. And I honestly don't know if I'll ever have sex again the way things are going. Yet, so many of my friends are hooking up.
Right.
What's going on? What is the? What do they know that I don't know?
People are willing. People are starved for touch right now. People are starved for personal, physical contact. There's a massage therapist here who is working. We both wore masks. We had the windows open and the breeze running through the room. But just getting a massage for me recently was like, oh wow, I forgot what it was like to be touched. Right. So there are people hooking up. There are even funny little infographics about what positions, right? Keep your breathing away from each other. You can use your imagination.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about it. Sex workers are in a big lot of trouble right now because if they're not willing to take a lot of risk, they've lost their livelihoods. And the people who are willing to take a lot of risk are putting themselves in really dangerous positions, both the customers and the sex workers. So it's a really, really different world. And we find ourselves really but there are people who are having lengthy conversations about who are you exposed to? Who am I exposed to? Would you get a test before you met me? Questions like that. Again, I've been saying through this whole thing, if you were alive in the 80s, you remember the change between never having to ask someone who had previously had sexual intercourse with. Now we're talking about who have you had social intercourse with. right? It's the same conversation. Who have you been exposed to? Who are your social partners? What's your level of risk before we're willing to meet up with someone? So it's that level of delicate sort of conversation before we meet someone. So that's where it's happening. So on the apps, in the matchmaking scene, in the dating app scene, people are having those conversations. So I'm betting that people, or they're either that or they're throwing caution to the wind, because we are humans. We need that contact.
We really do. And it's just, I'm so starved for it, but
yeah,
what can I do? I mean, I've gone out and done comedy shows outdoors.
Wow.
Just to have that human contact, or going out to dinner with somebody, and it's just you forget what that's like. I'm almost forgotten what even socializing is like, and much less. I just can't. I'm just trying to imagine the day, imagining everybody gets vaccinated. 6 months from now, it's all back to normal. Going up to a girl in a bar or a coffee shop and getting within 6 feet, and then. She's got another excuse to say no.
Right. It's going to feel strange. That's right. It's going to feel really strange. At the same time, I think we're all just as hungry for contact. So I think that there's a really repressed need. And I think it's going to, when people feel safe again, I think it's going to be slow. I think it's going to put a slowness into our interactions with people in some cases. And in other cases, speed it up because we're just so desperate for that touch. The other thing I'm really seeing is people are using porn so much more now, that there is a huge widespread incidence of people who are starting to get now what they call porn-induced ED, because the wiring for porn and how that makes your neurons and your hormones fire compared to with a person is so different that oftentimes people who are used to coming to porn can't now come with a person. And so it's actually a huge, men, right? So
really?
Yeah. So it's becoming a huge problem. It was anyway with the rise of porn, but now the way it actually hacks your dopamine system and your whole hormonal system, it's such intense stimulation. And it sometimes, now the parallel for this is women who can come with a vibrator and can't come with a partner, because it's a type of intense stimulation that a human being isn't capable of, right? We all know porn isn't real. They are performers. They're doing an amazing
Penises don't
job.
Vibrate, and they don't
Penises
have
don't
that,
vibrate, certainly not at that speed. So it's another one of these cases where rewiring yourself, if you're out there and you're watching and you're masturbating all the time to porn, every other time, every third time, put away the porn, use your imagination, change your touch, change your breathing, so that you keep elasticity in your system. Same with women. See if you can change your touch, not use the vibrator all the time, if you want to keep that elasticity in there. If you're good with it the way it is, that's great. Zero judgment. But often the more types of pleasure we can have, the more pleasure we have, right? And
so what do you think of OnlyFans? Because that's really where porn's gone.
Porn's going there more and more.
And where people, and I actually tried OnlyFans last month because Ella Darley, my guest, she had a special where she had goth pictures. It's a whole new thing. But I wanted to check it out because I have a lot of friends that do that. So I wanted to check it out. And then I went on there and I'm like, oh, okay. It's a strip club.
Right.
You pay an entrance fee and then they charge you to look at, here's a video. They send you messages every day. Here's a video. Here's a picture. Give you $5 and you can do that. But then some guys give them so much money, and it's like guys that always go to the strip club, they develop these imaginary relationships.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. It's like a peep show or a strip club or anything else. And again, people are lonely. People are craving touch. They're craving contact, even if it's simulated contact, right? Even if it's very ersatz, it's not giving them the real thing, but it's more than often we have right now. And, it takes more work to build a real relationship than an online relationship that's with in that kind of format. And we don't really have the opportunity to do that so much right now. So not only is it more effort, right? It's a different risk reward, but it's also, we just don't have those opportunities like we did. You can't just go to the club and meet somebody right now.
Right. Because to me, I would think that would be a little more unhealthy, but I don't know. I mean, in that when you watch a porn movie and some guy's got a 13-inch dick and this and that and the other thing, that's not you. You can get off, but that's not you.
Right.
When a woman's like, "Hi, baby, if you give me $10, I'll give you a special this," then you think,
right.
and nothing against the sex workers. I want them to make a living, and this is the way they can make a living. It's great,
right.
but I don't know. It's just so weird. It wasn't for me. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Well, I think that you're talking to that level of sensitivity to what's real, right? And that sense of unreality. And also it's very seductive, right? Because it feels so much closer to real because, like you said, there is that personal interaction. It's tricky, right? It's a really tricky thing. And I think we're trying to fill the gaps however we can right now. I think personally, right, we're trying to fill the gaps however we can, the loneliness, and also sex workers are trying to fill the gaps.
Financial void, yeah.
Financial void. I mean, it's a huge financial void.
Sure, and it's helped. It's helped a lot of them, and and I was like, for the last month, I subscribed to like 5 of them because they're my friends. But but even that seems weird. It's like, oh no, I'm seeing you naked, and it's a little weird. Anyway,
right.
But geez, where's
the
time
other thing is the other thing is that people like me are sometimes people in my field are going onto OnlyFans because if they want to give really explicit content, more and more. Right, the internet's closing down to sex positive content because they're trying to shut down trafficking. So we're all getting shut down kind of together.
Oh,
so
geez.
More and more people are going, even in my field, who really want to talk about sex positive stuff are going over to OnlyFans too.
So what is the difference? Well, first off, I was going to ask too, being Armenian, was there and I don't know. And once again, this is my ignorance. Were you repressed, or was it a repressed childhood as far as sexuality? Is there?
Oh, that's a good question. So, my dad's kind of a Middle Eastern guy, which really mostly meant nothing was talked about.
Right.
Nothing. And he was pretty strict, like anything that was even remotely suggestive in terms of clothing, I was never going to get out of the house in. There's no doubt. The things he thought were objectionable, I mean, he thought a jean jacket made me too trashy, like a jean jacket in the 1980s, right? So he was pretty strict, but I mean, kids will do what they will do. And you just change clothes on the way to school, like any other teenage girl. But I think that for me, it was more of like a void. Like I didn't know anything about sexuality. And so I was lucky enough to have positive first experiences. But it was just this void. And so I never learned how to ask for what I wanted, right? These were the things I had to learn later. How to ask for what I wanted, how to really communicate, how to know what I wanted, how to really lean into exploring that. Because so much of when you leave a void, so much of what we learn is sort of the lowest common denominator. You want to be what the guy wants. You want to do what he wants. And if you have desires, you sort of sneak them in or you don't think about them, right? Or oftentimes, right, you get really drunk so you can act on them. And so what's a more sort of embodied whole way to be present to sexuality? I was kind of late. I'm a late bloomer in that sense to really fully embrace the whole of who I am. But that's our life journey, right? Is to find out more and more. And now it's like the sky's the limit in terms of what we can learn about our own bodies.
Well, that's the other thing. Now, guys that date you now, when they find out that you are a sex expert, well, when you do workshops, I'm sure some of the guys are very flirty, but
well, I keep a pretty strong, when I do workshops, I keep a pretty strong professional boundary. Dating is just, it's
Are men intimidated, or are they titillated, or what?
Both. It's exactly that gamut. It's both. Typically, it's. I think it's strange to imagine, right, that I talk about sex all day. Often, I have to clear up that I'm not a sex worker for people,
right?
And that I, like you said, what is it like to do sex coaching? I'm not present while people are masturbating. I'm not present while they're having sex. Clearing things like that up. For potential partners, that I'm a woman and a human like anybody else. I have my own preferences. I have my own insecurities. I want someone who can meet me and say, like, let's figure out what this is together. I don't want to be your teacher.
And yet you know more than they do.
Well, in many cases, that's true. And, I'm the expert on my body. They're the expert on their bodies. Let's figure this out together. Do I know more? Yeah. But, That's all right. There's certain things they're going to know more about than me. I hope they'll bring that to the party, and it all works.
And what is sacred sex, and what's the difference between that and the run-of-the-mill sex that we've all been having?
Well, I think sacred sex, the way I would define it, is, again, taking the energy of turn on and knowing that it can be used for more than just the most sort of limited definition of orgasm that we have. That not only there are all kinds of orgasm, but that energy can be devoted towards connecting with the divine in your partner, connecting with the divine in yourself, those moments of lovemaking where you blend into the other person, or it goes beyond, just fucking. Mm-hmm. That it can start there and go all the way into really advanced meditative states, advanced ecstatic states, senses of being in contact with the whole universe, of knowing sort of the true nature, feeling this contact with the knowing of the true nature of life. So you can create the conditions in your lovemaking, in your self-pleasure that evoke that to going farther, not just more physical pleasure, but going into those higher states. And so some people come to me and are interested in that, and some people just want to have a better relationship with their partner. But if they want to go there, like, I'm all in. Spiritual study is sort of my jam. It has been for a long time. So, do you want to see God through sex? We can talk about it. So that's sort of like the heights of where it can go. Also, in terms of, like we talked about earlier, the idea of using sacred sexuality, using the medicine that is sex to heal our relationships to ourselves, to heal our relationships to our bodies, to love our bodies more, to love our partners more, and then to use a term I'm not crazy about, to manifest the things in our life that we want. So if you think about the performers who are like the most, like, they have that soulful quality that even if they're not the most physically attractive, they have that just something that makes them feel like so hot, right? It can be the gender you're attracted to or not. They just have that something to them. Usually that's what the Chinese call Jing Qi. It's this soulfulness. So you learn to cultivate that and bring that to your whole life. And it's like, those are the people who are world killers. Those are the people who really achieve highly. And so people, if you want to take sex that direction towards like building up this creative potential and power that makes you both sort of irresistible sexually, irresistible personality-wise, have that charisma, have that great creative flow, all those things are part of sacred sexuality to me.
I'm definitely into that. Well, it's weird. I've asked other people on this before. Is that I've had that in moments. And I have had moments.
Feeling?
What's that? The feeling? Oh yeah, when I've walked out on stage, when I've walked into a room,
yes.
That I was amazing, and the world revolved around me, and I don't know how to get that on a more consistent basis.
Right.
Because when I don't have it in my performance, and when I say performance, I mean comedy, not sexuality. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that long enough that I can have a performance where people go off and they're like, "You're amazing," but I know I wasn't as powerful or as amazing as I could be.
Right.
Because I didn't have that state. Is there anything? Just more sex? I mean,
more sex. More sex is always good, yes, but also cultivating that energy in the body. So again, talking about noticing where the turn on is in the body, and there are specific exercises. Usually if a client comes to me with that desire, I give them audio recordings of exactly how to start moving the turn on in their body, so that you start to cultivate it. So you think about building up this energy, storing it in the body, circulating it in the body, like taking turn on and literally moving it around with your breath in ways. There's specific techniques, right? And you do them, and like often it'll be like, here's your daily practice. Do this once a week, do this once a day. And you actually cultivate that type of energy.
And I mean, this is going to flow by so fast. I could talk to you all day about sex, all night. But before we go, and this is actually, we just started this a couple of weeks ago, but this is a new feature on the podcast. I don't know how it's going to go week to week, but I figure you would have a good answer. And that is, what's your kink? What is something that you like sexually?
One of the things I discovered about myself, this is really a question you ask every week now?
Yes.
What's your kink?
I actually, I had a heavy metal musician and a horror actor last week, and the heavy metal musician said touch was his fetish, and the horror musician or the horror actor, I don't know what he said, but they were pretty chaste answers. They were very surprised at the question.
One of the things I found is when I started exploring all this work was a really a submissive side I never knew was there, right? I tend to be the boss in a lot of places in my life, and that was one place that, so you got me to tell you. But really, I was really surprised by how much I wanted someone to take charge. And I was surprised by that. I mean, I guess it's stereotypical when you think about it, the people, right, who have a lot of responsibility, right? I'm running a business, I'm running a family, single mom, and in a lot of places I tend to be in a leadership role. And I was so happy to discover just that really all along there's like a little sub hiding out in here. Was
that before you were married and you had kids, or just since then?
You know, now that I look back, it was probably always there, but it's really in the exploration I've done since I started doing the sacred sexuality work that I became aware of it. In fact, during the training, I had a friend who was a professional sub, and she said to me, I think you might want to look at this. And as soon as she said it, it became so obvious to me. I was, that's what's operating under there. It was great because she really pointed out, and that's the amazing thing about hanging out with a room full of sex coaches. Boy, there's a fun evening.
Sure.
Is that she really pointed out that these kinks, they show up in so many areas of our lives. That's why people love to work with kink, right? Because they can play out things in their sex life that show up in so many areas. And one of the areas I really noticed that, like, I've always been really good when it came to taking direction in certain settings. And when we were talking about it in a bigger setting, she was like, oh, you need that in the bedroom. And I was like, oh, And again, since this is going to be out in the world, I have to say, with full consent, right? With all the correct rules of kink, with all those things. I don't want to be getting on my Instagram, people wanting to dominate me. That is not what I'm asking for, because you can already imagine, like your friend who got the dick pic, if you have my Instagram, what it's like with unsolicited.
Oh, I can only imagine. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And yeah, I can imagine all sorts of genitalia probably you get.
Instagram has gotten really good at blurring them out, but it doesn't blur out the words. And people often, they need to be reminded these kind of things, whatever your kink, you get consent first, right?
Right.
I know it's widely known, but just since we're putting it out there, right, that you always want to get somebody's consent.
Right. Well, I mean, we have so many people from the fetish world on this podcast that's understood. I always thought that was understood, but that's a whole nother discussion. We didn't even get into non-binary, all sorts of stuff that we didn't get into. I'd love to have you back because we can talk sex all day. But tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and exactly what you can teach people. What courses you have.
So I typically work with people one-on-one, although I do. So if you come to me as a couple, I work with you as a couple, typically one-on-one. I work with individuals one-on-one, whether they're single or coupled. And I do have women's groups where we go into supporting each other. Really, it's a beautiful thing to see women support each other in blossoming in their sexuality. And you can find me. I'm sure you'll have show notes that'll link me to my Instagram, which is all three of my names, Suzanne Najarian Goodson, and same with my website, which is SuzanneGoodson.com. Also, if you go there and you're a pussy owner, you can download a free guided practice. And if you're a guy and you're listening, you can contact me through my webpage, and I will I'll email you a practice. It's not the one that pops up on the page, and they're different depending on your body, what kind of genitalia you have and like to work with. I can send you a specific practice just to try it out and see, because I want the whole world to have more pleasure, be more connected to our bodies. And so that you can find that pretty easily on my website or my Instagram. They're the easiest places. And I'm always here. Send me your questions. Great
Respectful questions.
Respectful questions. That's right.
And they can be graphic, but respectful.
Exactly.
Just like this conversation was.
Yes, it was lovely. It's really a pleasure to talk to you, Mark.
No, I appreciate that. I actually will email you for that practice. I'm very very interested in that. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Suzanne Najarian Goodson. And it's funny because as I say, you have this thing where if you have a vagina, it's this. If you have a penis, it's that. That's when there were two genders. Now there's like 38. I don't know what you're going to do, but
right. Well, everybody loves pleasure, and everybody has a way they want to work with their body. And we can, although that's not my area of specialty, we can work with anybody.
Okay. Suzanne, I don't even know why I put that in, because you just set it up for just a great finale.
Well, I really enjoyed speaking with you. No, not at all. I think it's important to make sure we include that thought so that people know that, even though we had sort of like a binary sort of hetero talk here, that's not what it's limited to. So I'm really glad you raised the question, even though, again, I'm your basic cis white straight woman. Mm-hmm. I welcome all comers, and I will serve you as best I can in terms of, having the conversation you want to have. And so I loved having this conversation with you today.
Suzanne, you've been a delight. Thank you. And everybody, have a wonderfully creepy week. Bye.
Bye.